right, you guys, it's episode 83 of Inner Demons, and I'm going to get straight to it. So I just dropped a video on the Mexican Mafia. It's late, but I want to get this out to you guys because I know there's a lot of you guys that are waiting to see the next Inner Demon. I read the comments. I see you guys. So let me try to get into this. Now, episode 82, I told you guys that, for a brief period of time after I got into that incident where, we got into we all got drunk on the tier, and I ended up rushing one of the sergeants because I had to blow off some steam. But I was drunk. I'm not gonna lie, I was drunk. I needed to let some of that negative energy out, and I did. So I want to say it was about a good month or two, they kept me in the observation cell. They brought me back up to the third deck. I would go back and forth to these observation cells within this 10-year period of time multiple times. It's crazy how I would leave 2 years later, I would come back and end up in another observation cell that I was in before, go back to a tier. 2 or 3 years later, I would end up back in this observation cell. So I was jumping around all over that county jail, from the max tiers to the ob cells. It was crazy. So eventually they decided to move me back down to the tier. Now, I had been up there 2 months. That was a good enough amount of time for, me to heal somewhat. I still didn't feel like I had really grieved yet over, the loss of Vicky, but time made it a lot easier. It wasn't like I was walking around feeling, sad for myself with my chin in my chest. It was just something I had just pushed down, and I would deal with it, on my time, on my terms. The one thing that I did forget to mention to you guys is when I was in the observation cell up on the third deck, if you guys think back a couple episodes ago, I told you guys that Turtle from 9-5 was in second east with us. He came through. I knew that he had made some statements when he went to his Romero hearing. When he came through, when he was on the tier with me, I didn't put him out there. I didn't put him out there for the simple fact that he was somebody that I liked. I felt bad because of the situation that he was in. Even though he gave statements on me, I wasn't going to be the one to throw him on blast. And I had, honestly, to be honest with you guys, I had hoped that nobody would find out about it. And, me, I was in my situation. I was under question. So it wasn't like I was trying to pull other people's covers and see them fail or see them in a bad situation as well. So I didn't say nothing to them. However, they would end up coming through, rolling them up. They knew he cooperated. I'm telling you guys, classification stayed in constant contact with this outside agency to the point to where they knew everything that was going on. So I'm sure at some point, this outside agency called classification and were like, hey, check this out. We just took Martinez to a Romero hearing. We caught him slipping. We got him up on the stand, and he made some statements against Boxer. You probably want to get him off the tier. It's just a matter of time before the district attorney releases the discovery. And they knew when discovery was coming out. They probably kept him abreast of all that stuff. So my point is what I forgot to tell you guys is when I went back up to the third floor and they put me in that observation cell, I remember there was one day I was kicking back up there and just doing my regular routine, and the CO came up to my door, and CO Johnson, rest in peace, CO Johnson. Dude actually ended up committing suicide. It's crazy, but he ended up eating a gun. Anyway, so Johnson came up to my cell, and he came up real close to the crack of my door, and he's like, hey, Boxer, check it out. And I'm like, what's up, man? I'm standing right there, right? Standing right there watching TV. And he comes up to my cell door and he's like, hey, Martinez, Turtle. He's like, I'm working around the corner in Third West. He's over there on the max tier, Little Max. And, he sends his regards to you. And I was like, when he told me that, I didn't know Turtle was over there. Nobody had mentioned it to me. So, when he said that, I was like, hey, check it out, man. So I was like, you know what? Go back over there and tell him I said that I knew about what he did when he was down there in second east with me. I never said nothing because just tell him I got a lot of love for him. Tell him I'm you know, it's messed up that he's in that situation, but I understand. And tell him I'm not mad at him. You know, I understand he probably did what he did for his kids. And I hope that he gets back out and he sees his kids. You know, at that time I was still looking at life, and I pretty much come, you know, I was at peace with spending the rest of my life in prison. That's what I thought was gonna be the end results. So I told him, you know, it's all good. I'm not tripping. I was buried before he said whatever he said. He just added to it. But tell him I'm not mad at him, that, you know, I wish him the best of luck. I hope he makes it home. Tell him I said, don't worry about it. You know, that he can take that burden off his back, because I'm not tripping. Tell him I still got love for him. Keep his head up, and, you know, hopefully I'll see him again sometime in better circumstances. So he went over there and told him. And I remember when Johnson went and told him, I want to say it was the next day. The next day when Johnson came back from work, he came back over to my door and he's like, hey, Box. He's like, look, he's like, yesterday I went over there and I relayed that message to Martinez. And he's like, man, I'm going to be honest with you. He's like, when I relayed that message to him, exactly what you told me to tell him, it was almost like his shoulders, it was like almost like he perked up. Like he had released some weight off his shoulders. Like he could physically see that he just felt better. He was like, dude obviously has a lot of love and respect for you. He really respects you. And, you know, he's like, he said that? He really said that? And Johnson told me, yeah, man. He was like, hey, he wishes you the best of luck, and he knows you did it for your kids, and he's not tripping. And later on, I would get to talk to him. You know, I would get to talk to him about that conversation. And he told me, he was like, B, you know what, bro? He was like, you know, when that CO came back and relayed that message to me, he's like, bro, I'll be honest with you. From that point on, life got a lot easier for me. You know, it you know, boosted my morale up. All I was really tripping on at that point was the statements that I had made against you. You're somebody that I had a lot of love and respect for, and I ended up getting blindsided, and I you know, I did that to myself, but I felt bad, bro, that, you know, I had did that to you. And I was like, bro, don't, you know, I wasn't tripping. You know, I was buried before, you know, you said what you said. Conejo buried me. Actually, I buried myself when, you know, they raided my house, and I copped to everything at the house. So I was done right there. Anybody else that had anything to say about me, it really didn't have an effect. It substantiated the information, but I was done already. They didn't need no more. I was dead already. So anyways, yeah, he said, you know, from that point on, he was just able to concentrate on his case. He felt better. It was like a weight was lifted. And I told him, yeah, bro, you know, when I was in the ob cell and Johnson came over and he relayed that message, he told me that he physically seen you, like, you know, perk up, bro. And I was like, that's cool, man. You know, I hope he makes it back home. But, you know, anyways, that was something I forgot to tell you guys in the last episode. So anyways, I get back down to Second East now, and, you know, I'm back down there. Stretch is down there, Looney, Monos. There was an individual that came down there for a minute named Slimer. I forget where Slimer's from, but trip out. So Looney from SJG was somebody I had a lot of respect for. Him and Monos were my guys. Both of them, they were some cool cats. But Slimer and Looney were celled up for a brief period of time. This is when, I want to say, when they came back down, they had put them in separate cells. Looney was in one cell and Monos was in another. They would end up selling back up, but at this point they were by themselves. And then Slimer came on the tier and he moved in with Looney. Well, apparently they were in the cell bumping heads. And, you know, again, I'm on freeze. I'm like the last person they're supposed to be getting at about stuff that's going on the tier, issues that they're having with their cellies or things like that. But they still had a level of respect for me that, you know, they were still looking at me as like a leadership, like I was still part of the leadership. And I didn't have a problem with it. It was just crazy. You know, I would trip out that, man, these dudes ain't even treating, you know, they're not even respecting the protocol. They're not respecting me being on freeze, and that's cool. And like one viewer had said one time, was like, "Damn, bro, do you want him to treat you bad?" No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is I'm pointing it out that it blew my mind that either I had that much influence, and that's not something I'm saying for my ego, or they just respected me that much where they didn't want to offend me. They did not treat me like I was on freeze. I was like just one of the other homies down there, and one that was in a leadership position. That's how they treated me. At one point it was like I wasn't even on freeze. Everything was just coming to me. It was just like just regular routine. It would go through my hands. Nobody would say nothing. Dancing Bear wouldn't say nothing. Lencho wasn't saying nothing. Anybody on the tier, nobody had nothing to say. They shoot that to B. Once it goes to B, go down, keep it going down to Thavo and all the way down. It was a trip. It was a trip. So at around this time, Lencho is still on the fourth floor. He's still on the fourth floor. He's back up there with, because they had moved him after that incident. So he's back up there with Abundis and with Joker from, I want to say, VSJ, Vadio Sanho. So, they're on the fourth floor, and now that Lencho is separated from me, now that he's back up on the fourth floor and there's some distance between us, now the game started again. Now he's starting to talk shit, and he's starting to send filters over the Second East. When he just left the tier with me, when he was right there with me, he didn't have nothing to say. He didn't have nothing to say. I was his best friend. He was breaking, policy, sending me everything. But now that he's back over there on the fourth floor, he's basically pouting because he doesn't get to smoke cigarettes. He doesn't have it good like we had it down there in Second East. Now he starts to hate. Looney and Manos, they're constantly telling me, hey, this fool just shot another filter, and he's not really saying it, B, but he's saying it. You know what I mean? So, they would tell me things, and then you guys got to understand, because of the situation I was in, I had my ear to the ground. I'm on freeze. I'd already had been through one incident, with the phone slayer, right? So it was what it was. I couldn't take my situation lightly. I had to keep my guard up, be ready at any given time for something to go bad, because it could happen. You become complacent, you get comfortable, and next thing you know, you're getting whacked, you're getting chopped up, sliced up, stuck, and you're not expecting it. So they just catch you off guard. I wasn't gonna let that happen. So, like I told you guys before, there were so many of us Norteños on that tier that they had the yard program, is what they called it, broken up into like 3 different groups. 4 on this yard, 4 on that yard, 4 on this yard. So we were separated. Now, again, when Looney and Manos used to go to yard, being that they were like the secretaries, they had a box lunch. They had the box, and they kept all the kites in there from the county jail. All the mail that was coming in from Elmwood, from the 4th floor, from the snake pits, from the 3rd deck, the whole jail, 7th floor, again, Elmwood, everything that was coming in was going to their cell. They were the ones that would get it. They'd safe keep it. It would go to Stretch. He would screen it, but he would send it back. They're the ones that secured it. So when they go to yard, they'd send that box to me. So a lot of the times when they go to yard, as soon as they walk off, the tier, I'd open up the box. I had to. It didn't feel good doing that, because I felt like, I just felt like I was betraying, not anybody in particular. I just felt like I was betraying my people. That's how I felt. But I had to stoop this low to screen the kites and everything that was coming in, to see if there was just anything I could find with my name on it that might cue me in on something that's going on. So, I would go through as many kites as I could. A lot of them would be wrapped up in cellophane, and I wasn't going to take a chance opening those up, not being able to wrap them up the same way that they were wrapped, or just, them coming in early and I don't have a chance to wrap them up and they come back on the tier. So what I would do is if they were wrapped in cellophane, I wouldn't open them. If they were unwrapped, because a lot of them, they would be in the process of answering them. A lot of them, they busted them open and were reading them. So I was going through all those. I was going through them all. And again, that box there was nothing but contraband in there. There was writing pens, razor blades, and a bunch of different bindles from different parts of the jail. So all the stuff I went through, I never really found nothing about me except for there was one filter that I want to say Stretch he filtered that one kite just in Second East. And basically what it said was, hey, classification, gang intel, they believe that Boxer is running this tier, which is a good thing. Let them continue to believe that because it takes the heat off of us, but they're under the impression that he's running the tier. So, just keep that in mind. And again, it's a good thing. So, I read that and I was like, even though it wasn't really saying nothing, wasn't nothing that was really threatening my security, was nothing bad, nothing negative, I still, I got a little glimpse at some of the things that were being said on the down low. And I mean, they didn't have to hide that. They could have just came out and said that on the tier. Hey, B, they think you're running the tier. And it wouldn't have mattered. But anyways, that's the only thing I ever seen in the box that had my name on it. Everything else was reports, rosters, things that they were keeping track of that were happening within the jail, on the tier, on the streets, phone numbers, things like that. So all I was doing was waiting for my case to get back into the courts. Everything was stagnated at one point because it was in the California Supreme Court. Once my appeal came back and I got that one line denial, my case basically went back into the courts. And from that point, they started setting court dates. When you get indicted, you don't go through the whole process. You don't get to go to prelim or none of that stuff. You go straight from getting indicted to almost straight directly to trial. You go through your pretrial motions and all that stuff. So we were already right there. There's only 2 of us left. Everybody else pled out. So like I said, they basically okey-doked them. They stacked them up on strikes. They gave them 3 years probation, and either they cut them loose or they gave them like a year or 2 in prison. They were short. So the only ones that were left from my case, my original case, was me and Joe Abeda. And, I got to the point where once Vicky passed away, I pretty much told Joe, look, I'm ready to just plead guilty. I'm tired of being in this jail. I've been here too long. Nothing's really moving. If we can get the district attorney to agree that they drop the case on you, or at least give you something that will credit you out, because Joe had been there practically almost as long as me, or matter of fact, he was there longer, because when I got to the jail, Joe was there. So Joe had been there at that point for like X amount of years, but then he would end up leaving. So I stayed there longer than him. In the end, I would stay in that county jail longer than him. But at that point, he was ready to go, and he was like, yeah, you know what, if they'll throw something my way, like a 10-year deal or something, I'll take some more strikes and I'll take that. So the plan is I got in my attorney. I told my attorney, look, approach the DA, tell the DA that I'll take a life case. I'll take the 155 life. I don't want to go to trial. It's going to end up just being a circus act in there. They're going to bury me. There's a lot of stuff against me already. So, I don't even want to go through that. But I'll plead guilty if they're willing to cut Joe loose. And I didn't see why they wouldn't go for it. Joe was in the county jail before I caught my case. He wasn't really tied into the street regiment. He caught a conspiracy because he was helping me once I hit the jail. So was he really a big a big fish in their eyes? I don't think so. Joe had been involved in a lot of criminal activity. He'd been in he'd done a lot of time in prison. He was at Amano. He wasn't NF. So, I was pretty confident that they would go for it, especially if I gave him a guilty plea. So my attorney approached the DA, and it was something that they were willing to, talk about it. And every time my attorney would try to stop the DA would be like, yeah, yeah, we'll talk about it. But he could never get him to stop and lock something in. But he was like, yeah, if he's willing to plead guilty, we could probably do something. But so all this was going on at this time. Meanwhile, Lencho's still over there in the new jail on the fourth floor, running his suck muscle. And, at that point, I was like, let's get him back down. Let's get him back down, and por favor, I want to sell up with that dude. You know what I mean? I was trying to get him in the cell, and classification, they weren't going for it. They weren't even willing to talk about bringing him back down. I don't know why. Probably because he's sloppy, and they knew what his intentions were. Those guys continued to get caught with kites. That's the one thing that they were good at, is getting caught with kites. That's one of the reasons why I ended up getting caught up. That's one of the reasons why in the beginning they wanted to try to put that brown top on me, because somebody got caught with a kite saying that, I was in trouble. Anyway, so it was probably about a month or two after I hit Second East, after I came back down from the ob cell, that one day I'm watching TV. It was like towards the evening. We were watching rap videos. It was around that time. We used to watch them every day. And I look down the tier, and who do I see coming? Beetlejuice and motherfucking self. Dancing Bear is back in the county jail. So, at first, Dancing Bear said that the parole officer came over and they did a shiesty search on his apartment. It was crazy how they did it. And there was a lot of things he didn't mention, but one of the things that would later come out in one of the police reports that that he had was that they found a hypodermic syringe right outside his front door, which meant that it looked like he was shooting dope. I don't know. That was, that's what it looked like. And that's the one thing that stood out about his police report, and it's something that came up, and he was in denial, and they were trying to get him, crossed up behind that. But, he came back in for, all it was just a parole violation at first. So he's down there, and I want to say they threw a bunk case on him. Maybe it was for, I can't really remember. Maybe it was for possession of drug paraphernalia, something like that, something to just keep him there in the jail, because all he was there on was just a 3056, just a parole hold. So while he's there, though, he does the same thing that Lencho was doing when Lencho was down there. Manos and Looney are celled up. They're celled back up. Oh, that's the one thing I forgot to tell you guys about. Let me back up for a minute. So I was telling you guys about Slimer when he was celled up with Looney. The crazy thing about Slimer that happened with him was, so apparently Looney and Slimer were in the cell bumping heads, or one day Slimer was just having a bad day. I don't know what was going on in there, but they weren't talking, because I yelled over to Looney and I asked him something with regards to his cellie, and he was like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You live with him. He's right there. And he's like, hey, bro, he's doing his own thing. And I kind of picked up that they were going through some issues in there. So once I heard that, I was just like, oh, okay. So I just backed up and let them work it out in the cell. Well, what ended up happening is, and this didn't make no sense to me, Slimer at some point must have slid a kite to one of the COs that came through the tier. I want to say it was probably like during pill call or something, while Looney was in the cell. And Looney claims that he didn't see nothing. He wasn't watching. I don't know. But so the reason why I say he slid a kite to him is because The CO came in, did pill call, walked off the tier, then came back 10 minutes later, walked over to their cell, popped the tray slot, and told Slimer, Esquivel, cuff it up. So he's cuffing it up, and I'm standing by my door. They're right next door to me. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? So I don't say nothing while the CO's there. But as soon as they pull him out, he starts walking down the tier. I tell Looney, hey, what's up? Where's your celly going, bro? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, what the fuck you mean you don't know? How you don't know? You live with the dude, bro. And he's like, bro, like I told you earlier, we haven't been talking all day. And I'm like, okay, I understand that, Looney, but how did this dude just walk out of the cell right now without telling you something? I mean, did you not see him? How did he communicate that to the CO? And he was like, I don't know, bro. He's like, I've been sitting on my table reading my book all day. He claims he had his back to the gate, which I don't know, it just seemed kind of fishy to me. You know, you don't ever let a cellie walk out of the cell like that. And it was just something that kind of caught me off guard, something that Looney did. And Slimer ended up checking in. That's what he was doing. He was getting off the tier. I don't know. Looney said he was going through some emotional stuff with his lady or his kids or something, whatever it was, but he locked it up. Anyways, that's what I forgot to tell you guys when I was telling you about Slimer earlier. So Manos and Looney end up moving back in with each other. Now Dancing Bear, being that, he's back on the tier, they move him right next door to me again. The cell just so happened to open up and they moved him in there. So Dancing Bear gets out there to the streets. He had a little taste of the streets. He made a little bit of money out there. And like the rest of us, he's got money out there on the streets that it's out there and he's trying to get it back. So what does he do? He starts making phone calls. Well, he has Looney and Manos make the phone calls. He's telling them, hey, call this number, call that number, tell this individual to, I need that money ASAP to put it on my book. So they're doing everything he's telling them to do. And I'm just standing there watching the game, but I'm shaking my head like these dudes just don't get it. I've warned them multiple times and they don't want to listen. So, that's all Dancing Bear is doing for the next couple of days, just having to make phone calls, check over here, see if this individual's got that money, call this bride, see if if she's got that money. If she does, have her send it to sleepers up in the bay and then have her send it to Truco. And you got Manos making the phone call, facilitating the information to a female, and then Manos yelling down to Dancing Bear where you can hear him straight, ADB. This Heino wants to know, who do I send that money to? Dancing Bear, you can hear him yell down, hey, go ahead and send it to Esquivel or go ahead and send it to Truco. So even though Dancing Bear is not making the phone call, they can hear it. All they got to do is listen to the phone calls. And it would end up happening. Later on, they would all regret making all those phone calls. You guys should pretty much be able to predict what's going to happen. But, they did that to themselves. We all came in. I was the first one to get indicted. Me and my co-defendants, we made a lot of mistakes. And these guys, they had every opportunity to learn and capitalize off the mistakes we made, but they didn't. They just made the same mistakes we made. They didn't take none of it they didn't take heed to none of it. They got on the phones. They made all these phone calls. They tried to collect all this money, and it would get them all caught up. The whole fucking tier, literally. When they came through, it was probably about, Dancing Bear came through, and it was probably about 3 or 4 days after he got there. It was almost like law enforcement planned it. They brought him back in, and then they had a grand jury hearing going on during that time. So 3, 4 days later, all of a sudden, they call damn near the whole fucking tier for court. Boom, boom, they go all the way down the line. The only ones that don't go to court is like the Asian brothers up front, me, and my co-defendant, Joe. We're the only ones that don't go. They took the whole tier. everybody got indicted on that tier because they were making phone calls or because, they were writing letters or somehow, some way they got themselves all caught up. And it was a crazy day when they all went to court. I remember they all went to court. Everybody was stressed out. And then they came back like 2 or 3 hours later. And I remember Manos and Looney, when they came back, they looked sick. They just looked sick. They were like, fuck, we got indicted, B. You know what I mean? They indicted us all. They hit us with all kind of shit, right? And I was like, I told you, bro. I tried to tell you, man. You didn't want to listen. And, later on that day, I remember Manos making a comment that at the time I missed it. I caught it at first, and then I brushed it off like, nah, that wasn't directed at me. But, like I said, I caught it at first and then I let it go because I was like, nah, I think I'm thinking too much into it. Because he said something to the effect of, he's like, damn, B. He's like, it's fucked up. I'm like, what's that, bro? And he's like, not only do I got to watch out for my enemies, I got to watch out for my own people too, bro. And when he said that, it's almost like I felt like he was directing it at me somehow. But then I brushed it off and like I was like, nah, I'm reading too much into it. And I was like, yeah, bro, you should know that. But anyways, when he made that comment at first, like I said, I thought it was directed at me, but I brushed it off and it was something I wouldn't reflect back on until later. So, they all get indicted. Everybody on the tier got indicted. And we waited for the transcripts to come out. It took a couple of weeks. They all started getting their transcripts. And then same shit that happened with us, they all got their phone calls. They all got them down. Everybody on the tier had an iPod. Everybody on there had an iPod. Everybody had like 2,000-3,000 phone calls. It was crazy. But, those dudes did that to themselves. Dancing Bear got indicted. And then Lencho, then they would hit Lencho and everybody that was down there in Second East at that time, they hit him with another indictment. I felt bad for Looney and Manos because they get indicted with Lencho, then they get indicted with Dancing Bear because they were the secretaries. But anyways, I know this one was kind of dry right here. I just wanted to get something out to you guys. I will get another one out probably tomorrow. If not, I want to get out a couple Mexican Mafia videos. I got a ton of them, and I want to start pumping them out. They're good videos, good videos. But anyways, all the guys that you have been hearing about, the Huero Verde, Peanut Butter, you got even Theo Pio Topo, Benjamin Peters, you have Tupi, Ruben Hernandez, the Death Row faction. I got some crazy stories about Death Row, some, the politics on Death Row, some killings on Death Row, Folsom, DVI. I got so many stories. It's crazy. A couple of weeks ago, it was like I was hurting for stories. I was hurting for stories, and the content was, was starting to get slim pickings. But then, you guys came through. I got an overwhelming amount of responses from you guys that tapped into my email, and I appreciate you guys. And even though I got a lot of stories, I'm going to go ahead and be a pig about this. I'm going to tell you guys, I want more. So if you guys got more stories, tap in with me through my email, boxerparadigm@gmail.com. If you got stories about the Mexican Mafia, shoot them my way so that I can, put them on the channel. For those of you that, are willing to share stories, I'll compensate you for your time. Like I always say, time is a commodity. Everybody got to pay bills, man. Even though some of you might not be doing it for the financial reasons, you still got to put gas in your tank. You still have to pay bills. So I'll compensate you for your time and just for sharing the stories with me. So, tap in with me through my email. Again, boxerparadigm@gmail.com. You guys won't have to tell the stories. You will remain anonymous if that's what you want to do. I'm the one that's going to relay the story. All I'm asking is for you guys to relay the story to me and to, give me factual stories that are true. only the facts, because I don't want, you know, stories that are made up or stories that are fabricated, because then that starts to affect my credibility. Even though I let it be known that I'm putting these stories out here that I'm getting from other people, still it has a reflection on the channel. Anyways, with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one short. It's late. I want to get both of these out to you guys by tomorrow. I don't know what Sandman got going on. He's got some kind of concert. Maybe I think it's Cyndi Lauper and Madonna or something. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this to him so that he can edit these two videos and we can get them out. I'm gonna continue to push content. I know the last couple of days we haven't been able to really put anything out, but I'm gonna at least try to get one story out a day. I'll throw a couple of the thumbnails in the community just to show you guys what we got, you know, as a preview, what we got coming up in the next couple of weeks. Anyways, with that said, again, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode 83 of Inner Demons. I'll get another one out, if not tomorrow, the following day. It's your boy B, and I'm out.